Welcome to the Ephesiology Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the study of the early Christian movement and its implications for the church today. Today we are joined by Michael, our resident ephesiologist. I am Andrew Johnson, the pastor at Neartown Church in Houston, Texas. And we are joined by Lance Ford, co-author of the book Starfish and the Spirit. It's a fantastic book, but not as fantastic as Lance is. So Lance, welcome to the podcast.
It's good to be with you guys. Been looking forward to this thing.
This is
You're
good.
only saying that Lance is fantastic because you guys share similar music tastes.
Well, look, anybody that's a fan of Leon Bridges and Khruangbin, I'll spell that for you later. Just it's fully supported, fully loved. So,
well, it was amazing that you picked up on that, Andrew. I mean, because like on my screen, I think my big head is blocking my Leon Bridges poster, but all it took was me making one little slight move, and you went out of your skin a few minutes ago. I saw it, so very perceptive.
Hey, there's actually a local record store. It's the one that I go to for most of my vinyl buying, called Vinyl Edge. And I don't know, I need to give kudos to whoever is the art designer for the album covers for Texas Sun, and then its complement Texas Moon, because their open and close sign, the open sign is the background of Texas Sun, and then they flip it over to the other side, and it's the Texas Moon, and
that's cool.
Exactly. It's just cool. It's just cool. None of you have tuned into this podcast though to hear us talk about Leon Bridges or Khruangbin. So I want to ask Lance a few questions. For those who are not familiar with you, Lance, what are some important things that people should know about you that you are excited that have happened in your life?
Oh, well,
yeah, exactly. Curveball.
I guess,
right out the gate.
I mean, that's a really broad. Can you narrow that down just a little bit? I mean,
what are 3 important things about yourself that you would love other people to know? See, I took it just broader and a little more focused.
No, there you go. You narrowed it down. You put it in the funnel there. Well, I guess one of the first things I would say is anybody that reads my social media or has just skimmed any of my writings and everything, I would hope that they would know that I have a deep, deep love for the church. And coming out of my gifting, a lot of times people that move in more of a prophetic type of a gift with a more prophetic voice, sometimes we can have a tendency to hide behind or use the excuse of, well, I'm just giving critique, or but really they're just angry people.
I would say a cynic, a cranky person. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of people that move with a prophetic voice that's really the case. And I wouldn't say that that's not been the case in my own life at times. I don't feel like that's where I'm at presently. I don't feel like that's where I've been for a long time, but sometimes when you critique something that's very precious to someone, they get very defensive and feel like that you don't, especially when it comes to the church, you don't love the church. I was having a conversation actually with one of my closest friends a couple years ago, and he said you're always criticizing the bride. And I said, no, I'm not criticizing the bride. I'm criticizing the groomsmen that are treating the bride wrong. And so my work on leadership and my critiques on leadership definitely comes out of a deep love and a hope for the church. Gosh, I I went real heavy on that light-hearted question.
Okay. So you went with one real strong one. So throw us maybe two softballs that maybe aren't so
Okay.
heavy.
Well, and then we
Okay,
want to
two
come back to
softballs.
that, Lance.
Yeah, because I think that's worth hitting on.
Yeah.
And we do
Yeah.
want to come back
Okay,
to that
so
because
two-
yeah, I just
Sure,
was saying that we do want to come back to that because, I mean, that's one of the unfortunate consequences of having a prophetic voice is that often it's taken as criticism. And yeah, and so we'll come back to that. But Lance, continue, please.
Yeah. Okay, just a second. Let me grab something. I'm going to show you guys something.
There's nothing better. He had to kick through his 3 dogs in the background just to go get it.
I did. Okay, so here's something about me.
Okay.
Injured quarterback.
You live
Age 8.
Okay, but
Wants
you
to
got
play for real.
age 8. But you see,
Oh, that's Roger.
who I'm with there. That's Roger. So
wow.
that's Roger Staubach's. So anyway, long story short, I had an injury when I was 8 years old. Almost got killed with a golf club accident between me and my buddy, and I got a plate in my head, and I had all these surgeries and everything. And so 40 years between this picture. That picture was staged. Long story, but I did not get that football that it looks like Roger signing for me as a 8-year-old. This picture was staged. Now Roger gave me a bunch of pictures of himself and everything, autograph. But for 40 years, I'm wanting a football signed by Roger. So 40 years later, I was getting ready to go back. I was living in Kansas City. I was going to go back for my high school reunion. And on a whim, one late afternoon, I found Roger Staubach's company's info email. And I sent a picture of this article, and I asked if there's any way I could get an appointment with Roger so I could get my football signed. Because I was coming home in 3 weeks. And first thing in the morning, I opened my email box up, and his assistant said, yeah, Roger's game. And so anyway, I've got another picture I can't show you right now, but I got to spend an hour with Roger one-on-one, and I got my football signed.
Thanks, straight.
That's great.
That's
we
fantastic.
restaged this picture. But I can't show you that one right now. Okay, so
we went real heavy. We went real light. What's number 3?
Something in the middle. Something in the middle is that even though I definitely love the Dallas Cowboys, I lived for a long time in Kansas City, and thankfully they became my AFC adopted team. And so I've been a very happy man the last 5 years.
I love that. Honestly.
Well, especially considering Dallas's record the past 5 years.
It's helped. It's really helped. It's really helped having the Chiefs.
Anyway, that's good.
Okay.
We won't go down the anti-Dallas Cowboys trail, of which I am way too happy to be on. So let's go back to substantial good things. So you had mentioned some of the frustration that you see, and one of the one of the instigators in your writing is being frustrated at the groomsmen who are treating the bride so poorly. Can you elaborate on that very insightful point that I think needs some space to breathe?
Yeah, well, the church, when you read the New Testament language, definitely Jesus, but then when you start reading the epistles and on what Paul had to say, they speak very tenderly of the church and of the Lord's protection, the groom's protection, the hen's protection over her brood, this tender care. And it's very interesting to me that when you listen to some of the most noted bully leaders that have been caught in scandal over the last several years, many of these guys, and so far it's pretty much been all guys, most of them, I'm not saying all of them, but many of them have they will speak a whole lot about headship. in the family, in the home, and about proper headship. And the irony to me is that they boast about headship in the nuclear family, and they deride those who they feel like are violating true headship as they interpret it. And yet they completely violate the headship of Jesus as the head of the body. Because they supersede that position. In fact, I think that is one of maybe the biggest problem in leadership today, is that men supersede Jesus as head of the body. And just like if you were to think about, if you've ever known anyone that was paralyzed, I've got two good friends. Unfortunately, both their sons at 17 were paralyzed. One in a motorcycle accident, one in on a Friday night in a football game. And, if you look at those young men today, if you visit with either one of those boys, their bodies look fine. I mean, if they're sitting on a couch or sitting in a chair, they look fine. And you know what? Their legs are fine. Their organs are fine. But there's one little spot between the head and the body up in the neck that something's disjointed. And that's disrupted all the information from the brain into the body, the distributed intelligence from the head into the body. And it's caused a lack of movement, right? So I think that and now I'm not saying that Paul was thinking about spinal cord injuries when he wrote Ephesians 4, but when he does talk about, the proper jointing, actually, I mean, that term is in the Greek, that is a word that has everything to do with, realigning joints. And so I that's what I guess agitates me a bit is when you have leaders that absolutely, I would call it domestic abuse within the church with a lot of the bullying leadership that we have. And so I think that warrants a little upset.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I appreciate that so much, Lance. That's a great illustration, I think. The disjointedness between the head and the rest of the body and how that paralyzes the body. And it's interesting, too, because as you know, in Ephesians 4:11, the equipping, that word equipping is to mend, to make right. And it was often used in medical practice where, a bone would be broken and the equipping was to fix that and make it right again. And so that illustration, I think, is very powerful. You made a comment a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to quote you on this, and I'd love for you to riff a couple minutes on it because I think it was so powerful. And in fact, I think it was, just to the point. You wrote on Facebook, and I'm quoting you, "If you are a staff member in a church where senior or executive leaders forbid being questioned about decisions, you are in a toxic environment and a system Jesus forbade by calling it the way of the Gentiles. Jeremiah would have called it Babylonian. The power source is not neutral. It is demonic. It is widespread and must be stopped in our generation."
That's real light.
Yeah, well, the thing is that we just keep hearing the same old stories over and over, and it's the same script. And one of the things that seems to flow, and most of my focus over the last probably 13, 14 years has been on these leadership issues. And one of the things that constantly comes up, and if you've listened to, and I know you guys have, and a lot of the audience would have listened to, like the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill podcast. You've listened to stories from Julie Royce reporting. Now there's been 2 documentaries about Hillsong that come out. The fall of Willow Creek. It's interesting that documentary hasn't come out yet. I'm sure someone will do it. But one of the things that happens almost inevitably that you'll hear when you interview and you do research with staff members that have been under very hard hierarchy, one of the things that'll come out of it is they'll say that they were forbidden to question a leader. In fact, I think one of the famous quotes from Mark Driscoll, he threw out some elders for the quote sin of questioning.
Wow.
He fired his assistant for heresy. He called it heresy when she questioned a movie made. It was heresy. So it is demonic. I believe that I could make a strong case of that from Paul when he talks about the powers. Leadership is not neutral. It comes from one source or another. And when you look at what Jesus said, he could not have been more clear. And in fact, we have it recorded twice, which could have been one occasion. You got the synoptic gospels. It could have been the same occasion, but reported a little different. Or it almost seems like it was at least two occasions where he said almost the same thing when he set his disciples down and said, the Gentiles dominate one another, or they exercise lordship over one another. It will not be that way among you. And most of our leadership constructs today, it's all about dominating one another. We call it management, but it's just a nice term of saying somebody gets to be over someone else and dictate how they spend their time, how they do their tasks, even down to the techniques sometimes that they use.
Wow. Every once in a while, Lance,
these powers come from somewhere.
Yeah. Every once in a while, Lance, I'll come across the church constitution or be made aware of a church constitution where members are required to sign agreement to absolute submission to the senior pastor. That it is his vision. Everybody is moving in his direction. And if you want to be a part of this body, then you need to follow suit. Is that a symptom of what you're talking about here? Is that
I definitely believe it is, Michael. And there's no warrant in the New Testament for that. And I mean, so much of this nomenclature that we use and that we just kind of ad hoc accept without blinking or thinking, it has completely shaped the way that the evangelical church organizes itself for the most part. And this stuff goes back. The thing about it is today's leadership, organizational leadership, most of it's not even 100 years old. This is new stuff. And when people hear me say that, they say, "Oh, leadership's been around. It's been said." I'm talking about the way that we lead today. Okay, I'll tell you what. Let me see. This is handy right here.
I would say
And
go
of
down
course,
the rabbit
anybody
hole.
that's just listening can't see this. Okay. This is a 1955 Oxford Dictionary. The word leadership as a definition is not even in here.
Yeah.
It's leader. It's. I think there's about a 6-word sentence that uses the word leadership in a definition of leading or leader. I think's in it. The 1915 Webster Dictionary didn't have the word leadership in it at all. The first books, it seems, that researchers can find with the title leadership in it. The first books were printed in the 1930s. I mean, that's how new the term leadership, as far as being bandied about and being used so much, it's a nascent term. And most of what we call leadership today is actually management. We just put a little sexier word on it. So if you look at most of the way that HR departments work, and if you look at most of the tiers of our hierarchical leadership today, it all goes back to Winslow Taylor in the 1930s, who was an engineer at Bethlehem Steel, and he's the father of scientific management, or Taylorism. And that pretty much that was the whole idea that some people are thinkers, some people are workers, and there's a sharp separation between the two. And so as you see church growth theory come in the 1960s, and then really take off in the 70s and 80s, a new type of leadership was needed to feed that furnace. And there wasn't much offered. And so a lot of pastors started turning to secular sources for management and leadership. And if you look at the history of books written by decade, it's shocking, because you just barely find any books about leadership up until started in the 1950s, and then the 60s a little bit more. And I'm talking handfuls of books. Now, there's thousands of books published every year about leadership. And so a lot of times I'll ask pastors, I'll say, tell me, name 5 classic books on leadership. Now, when we talk classics, usually we'd be thinking about books that are 80, 90, 100 years old. If we were talking about classic theology, right, we'd go way back beyond that. But when I ask a group of pastors, name me 5 classic books, I mean, they're going back to the 21 irrefutable laws of no, I'm talking classics. Tell me something.
Right. Not the collection, not the summary.
Tell me something that's really, tell me something really old. Most pastors can, some of them can come up with Oswald Sanders, who was spiritual leadership. 1967.
Yeah.
You will be hard pressed to find any books before that on Christian leadership. It's just such a new thing, but now it just dominates us. And my argument is that what we traditionally called the clergy laity divide, which a lot of pastors today say, oh no, there's no clergy laity divide. Well, we've just replaced that with the with the leader follower divide. We just replaced the language. And so even the whole idea of making followers is totally accepted today. I would say go read Paul and see what he has to say about that.
Yeah. That's super interesting. I'm just trying to scurry in my mind about books about leadership. And it strikes me that as you think about classic volumes that would even touch on leadership, as you were saying, they really touch more on character than they do on leadership. You think of Jerome's illustrious men and women, where he describes the character of these people and how important that character was. And even in early studies of leaders, the emphasis was on character and so on.
Yes. Oswald Sanders' book, Spiritual Leadership, is very, 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 very much character, right? The whole book is character-centered.
Mm-hmm.
It really is, and I mean, that's a great point. And, I've thought, now Andrew's is a bit younger. He's a couple years younger than you and I, Michael. I know that.
Just a couple.
Just a couple.
Just a couple. So you and I can definitely remember this. I mean, if you're thinking about this, let's say if you were to walk in a coffee shop in 1980.
Are there coffee shops? So you mean you went to the diner?
It was 5 cents. Every one of them was like on Elf. They had the sign that said "World's Greatest Coffee."
World's Greatest Coffee.
And it said, "You did it! You did it!" So,
gosh, love that.
If you were to walk into a coffee shop and you were to sit down, it's 1982, let's say, and you were to sit down with 5 local pastors, have breakfast with them, what would those guys be calling themselves? They would not have been calling themselves leaders. They would have most likely been calling themselves ministers. Or if the other patrons around that knew them as local pastors, they'd say, the ministers gather every Tuesday morning over here. They wouldn't be saying the leaders gather. That wouldn't even have been in the nomenclature. They viewed themselves as ministers, as shepherds, as pastors. And of course, the word minister means servant. And that word's been obliterated.
Right.
But
don't
even get Michael started.
I can imagine. But my point here is that leadership has been so imported and jammed down the throat that we accept so much that completely conflicts and conflates directly against what Jesus and the writers in the New Testament had to say. And we just don't even blink at it. We just like say, Jesus, you're full of whatever. And we just keep going. Our titles that we use, I mean, come on. Jesus couldn't have been clearer about that. And I know that when I speak to a group of pastors and I bring up the titles, the room just gets real quiet, and then the beat goes on. So we got a lot of work to do. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I mean, you're hitting on some, I think, touch points, perhaps pain points in the church today. Because, I mean, really, if we think historically about what's happened in terms of leadership development, and we go back to the 60s and 70s in particular with the rise of servant leadership from Robert Greenleaf, that's coming out of a context where there were just all these poor examples of leaders, and something had to be done to change that. And the church bought into the idea of servant leadership, which is a good thing. I mean, it was a good cultural corrective. But even that today is being used as a kind of a power term that I am a servant leader. Therefore, you can't
follow everything I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Okay. So
it really is.
I have a question, and this is not because not from disagreement by any means. I have heard it said that the pushback when somebody is saying, "Hey, there's an unhealth that has come into the church," and the unhealth in leadership is because it looks a whole lot more like the business world than it looks like what we see Paul and others commending us on how we lead the churches, how we serve as ministers, how we play our part. And some people say, well, how will anything get done if we just move to this shared leadership? I don't want to say title less, but this flat, everybody's on the same page. How will anything get done? How is there going to be a tie vote? Who has the actual authority in the room? Lance and Michael, certainly. What do you guys say when I guess in the name of efficacy, somebody says, how are we actually moving things forward if we don't have that?
Well, the first thing I would say is that leadership does not happen in a vacuum of hierarchy. So it's not like you just wipe it all out and anything's going to be happening. I could definitely see that scenario taking place. What I'm advocating is far from that. In fact, what I'm advocating and what Alan and Rob and I advocate in the Starfish in the Spirit actually raises accountability to far greater levels than hierarchical leadership does. It engages the entire body. It helps them discover their gifts. It activates their gifts. It releases them to practice their gifts. It's a more speedy system as far as getting things done because you're eliminating all the permission giving and sign-offs of dominator hierarchy. And yet at the same time, everyone is accountable to everyone. And as you move down into each one of those more micro teams or departments, the accountability is very strong among those team members. I'm not just accountable to one or two bosses above me. I'm accountable to all 6 of my team members here.
Mhm.
And so we really
And
do
just-
talk about processes and systems
Yeah,
that
and-
make this work. A lot of micro agreements in here among team members. I'm
love
sorry,
that.
go ahead, Michael.
No. I mean, you're saying things that are triggering things in my mind, which is great and maybe troublesome for Andrew. But
Nope.
and it's not just you accountable to them; it's them accountable to you. It's just this
Yes.
mutual
Yes.
accountability that's going on. Lance, thank you for bringing up that book. You, Rob Wagner, Alan Hirsch came together, brought your brilliant minds to the subject of leadership, and you use the starfish as an analogy of leadership. Talk about that. Why the starfish? Why do you see that as an important metaphor for us as we think about leadership?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you just a little bit. A lot of listeners, I'm sure, have read The Starfish and the Spider by Ori Brofman.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened? So the analogy in Ori's book, The Starfish and the Spider, was that because it's really about decentralized leadership. And so the analogy was, if you take a spider, if you look at a spider and if you look at a starfish from a bit of a distance, I mean, in a way, they're shaped the same. They look a bit alike, but there's a huge difference. A spider has a head, and if you cut the head off a spider, the spider dies, right? We know that's going to die. But if you cut a starfish in two, or if you cut a leg off a starfish, it will grow another starfish. And why? It's because the neural system is spread throughout the entire body of the starfish, where the neural brain in the spider is all held in this one head.
Right.
So that's the analogy. And in fact, Alan and I had become friends with Ori back, I think 2006 or 2007, maybe 2007. And we've had Ori speak at some of the conferences that we put on back in the day. And so we stayed up with Ori. And so Ori really helped consult on our book. That's why he wrote the foreword for it and gave us permission to use the title and everything. And so he was a really great friend throughout that process. But that's the analogy of the book. And so, it really does line up with the body and what we were talking about a few minutes ago when I was talking about the disjointedness of the intelligence of the head being spread throughout the body. So that's the analogy of the starfish.
How do you then, again, not trying to go for spoilers and prevent people from buying the book, but to add to it and increase sales, kind of, why starfish in the spirit? If Ori has written this idea and there's an understood decentralized leadership, then what is starfish in the spirit bringing to the table, bringing to the conversation? Why the addition of the spirit to this idea?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked that question. That's a great question, Andrew. So I would, over the years, I would walk into pastors' office, and so many times I would see that they would have this book, The Starfish and the Spider. And about the same time, Alan Hirsch's book, The Forgotten Ways, came out. I think they came out the same year. And the same thing was happening with both of these books with pastors. They would read both of these books and they go, man, I love this. I believe in it. I just have no idea what to do with it. I have no idea how to incarnate this stuff and how to live it out. And so the thought was, well, what would happen if we were to take a lot of the principles, a lot of the movemental principles, what we call the MDNA, what Alan calls the MDNA and the Forgotten Ways? What if we kind of took some of these principles and we took the starfish decentralized principles and we brought them together and we put them together and then we really loaded it up with practical steps, not just in theory, but we said, here's what it can really look like to transition towards this, to get movement, in a church. So that's why we said the starfish in the spirit.
I think it's funny. Michael, you're not getting me in trouble by all these things. Just because I work at a church and I am a pastor doesn't mean I'm not allowed to enter into these conversations. However, I do fully and completely appreciate, Lance, that you have in mind practitioners, not just theorizers. I was just lamenting to a friend that the fun, cool, evangelical thing is to write a book and collect ideas about something, or to increase information about it. Have you read that book from Alan? Oh yeah, it's great. Love his theory. Cool. So what are you doing with it? I don't know, but I really like his thoughts on this. And have writing books that then move idea and theory into practice so that it gets out in the world, so that the design and the desire, the heart behind the mind is actually seen, and it plays forward in such a way. And again, I very much appreciate that term, activating what God has already put in us so that it plays out, so that we're not fighting over terminology, and we're not fighting over theory or ideals, but we're saying, let's just go on the assumption that the Holy Spirit has given us himself. God has given us the Holy Spirit. He lives in us. He has given us gifts, and he has called us into action, into the world. And we are coming alongside people to activate what God has already put in them, so that they can get after what God is calling them to do in this world. That is exciting. So
yeah, I mean, that's the stuff.
As a hopeful practitioner who wants to activate practitioners, thank you for writing something that is working towards the how, because not everybody sees the how, and the how is necessary.
Yeah, well, that's the attempt. I mean, that's been I've, over the years, also written a lot of stuff on very practical missional neighboring and things like that. But I've worked with Alan since about 2006, and before I really started writing more and more specifically on leadership, and that became really my burden. I feel like my main calling. I was doing a lot on really missional living and neighboring and things like that. And what I did was I would just try to frame my mind. I would say, okay, I'm going to take what Alan's written and try to translate it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Put some skin on it, put some legs on it.
Not trying to translate it from Portuguese to English. I'm trying to translate it from Alan's mind-blowing brain for the rest of us, and that's because so often, pastors and leaders, I mean, and this can happen with many great theologians that we all read, is to try to bring that down into practical measures that's the great difficulty. So, that's it, but it's no good if it just stays in a book or stays, highlighted in a book. If we haven't fleshed it out, it really hasn't changed anybody's life.
Do you think you'll start adopting the title Translator Lance Ford?
No, no. I think that there's better and smarter people than I have already created, and they've done a lot of missiological work on these things. So that's why I'm like, okay, I'm just going to focus on the thing that aggravates me the most. And that's leadership.
Well, we're grateful that you are focusing on that, Lance. I think you have a lot to speak to leadership today, and we're grateful for you and for your ministry for this book. We really want to encourage listeners to look for that book, The Starfish and the Spirit, Unleashing the Leadership Potential of Churches. And it's a good read, highly recommended.
Lance, if anybody wants to, if they want to get after you, if they want to raise a question with you, follow you on the interwebs, where can they find you?
Yeah. First of all, anybody that wants to contact me directly, I'm happy to be contacted. I mean, we've got a Starfish email, but you can email me directly, lanceford@me.com. And that sounds like such a narcissistic email address, but that's Steve Jobs is the one behind that. That's
exactly
the email address. So lanceford@me.com. And then we do have a website on the Starfish. I can't even tell you what the website is because it's listed in the back of the book. I think it's
utilize Google.
I think it's the starfishandthespirit.com. I think that's our website, and we haven't opened up our second season of our podcast, but we do have the Starfish Church podcast. We do have that. We have some really good interviews on there. So yeah, I'd be more than happy to connect with anybody. And of course, I have Facebook. I'm on there way too much.
I was going to say, when you went to find the provocateur, Lance Ford, make sure to hunt him down on Facebook, turn a holy streak onto that.
Well, that's where good interchanges can come. Yeah. Yes. Amen.
Okay. Well,
that
Lance,
love-hate relationship we have.
110%. Don't even we can't even get started on Twitter. So, so Lance, thank you for your time. Michael and I were very excited to have you on and talk through these things. Listeners, I do commend to you his book. Please check it out. If you want to kind of engage with us in further conversations, check us out online at Ephesiology.com. Go to masterclasses.ephesiology.com if you would like to continue to take steps towards online theological education. See what God has for you, see where you might be activated in what he's calling you to do for his kingdom locally, or just go and find us on Facebook. We too are trying to find that holy streak on that platform. So for Lance, from Michael and myself, thank you for joining us on the Ephesiology Podcast.